I should have seen it coming. The way my sister Claire tilted her head when she looked at my outfit that night. The slight curl of her lip. The spark in her eyes that told me she was about to make me the punchline of her evening entertainment. But I didn't see it coming. Or maybe I just didn't want to believe she'd actually do it. We were at Belmont's, this upscale steakhouse downtown where the cheapest appetizer costs more than most people's grocery budget for a week. Crystal chandeliers. White tablecloths so crisp they looked like they'd been ironed with mathematical precision. Waiters in black vests who moved like shadows, filling water glasses before you even realized they were empty. I didn't belong there. At least, that's what Claire wanted everyone to think. She'd insisted on this dinner. A family gathering, she'd called it. Mom's birthday was coming up, and Claire wanted to celebrate early because she and her husband Marcus were leaving for the Maldives the following week. Another vacation. Their third this year. I'd almost said no. My bank account could handle it, obviously. But something in her voice when she called, that syrupy sweetness that barely masked the condescension, made me want to refuse. Still, I showed up. I wore a simple black dress. Nothing designer. Nothing flashy. Just clean lines and comfortable fabric. My shoes were from last season. My purse was leather but practical. Claire noticed immediately. "Oh, Emma," she said when I walked in, her voice loud enough to carry across the private dining room she'd reserved. "You came straight from work, didn't you?" I hadn't. But before I could answer, she was already turning to Marcus, to Mom, to her friends Jessica and Nathan who I'd never met before that night. "My sister works so hard," Claire announced, like she was presenting evidence at a trial. "Always grinding away at that little marketing firm. What do they call it? A startup?" She made air quotes with her perfectly manicured fingers. "It's actually doing really well," I said quietly, taking my seat at the far end of the table. Claire smiled. That smile. The one that never reached her eyes. "I'm sure it is, honey." The dinner started innocently enough. Mom talked about her garden. Marcus told some story about a client meeting that went wrong. Jessica and Nathan, both dripping in designer everything, nodded politely while checking their phones under the table. I ordered a modest meal. Grilled chicken. Side salad. Water with lemon. Claire ordered the most expensive steak on the menu, plus 2 appetizers, plus a bottle of wine that cost more than my monthly car payment. "You're not drinking?" she asked me, one eyebrow raised. "I'm driving." "Right. Of course. Always so responsible." She said it like an insult. The first real jab came during appetizers. Jessica was showing off her new bracelet, diamonds and platinum, a gift from Nathan for their anniversary. Claire cooed over it, holding Jessica's wrist up to the light so the stones caught the chandelier glow. "Emma, didn't you have an anniversary recently?" Claire asked suddenly. My chest tightened. "I'm not seeing anyone right now." "Oh, that's right." Claire snapped her fingers like she'd just remembered. "You broke up with that guy. What was his name?" "David?" "Derek." "Derek." "Yes. He was nice. Worked in finance, didn't he?" I nodded, picking at my salad. "Such a shame," Claire continued, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "But I suppose it makes sense. Men like that, successful men, they want a certain lifestyle. Partnership, you know? Someone who can keep up." Mom shifted uncomfortably. "Claire, I'm not being mean, Mom. I'm just saying Emma has different priorities. She's focused on her career. Living that budget-conscious life. There's nothing wrong with that. The words hung in the air like poison. Budget-conscious life. She might as well have said cheap life. In fact, I was pretty sure that's exactly what she meant. Marcus laughed, this uncomfortable chuckle that said he knew his wife was being cruel but wouldn't dare stop her. Nathan and Jessica exchanged glances, clearly sensing the tension but too polite to acknowledge it. I should have left then. But something kept me in that chair. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was the small, broken part of me that still wanted my sister's approval, even after everything. Or maybe I was just waiting. Waiting to see how far she'd actually go. If you're enjoying this so far, don't forget to like this video and watch till the end. I'd love to hear your thoughts. The entrees arrived. Claire's steak was massive, perfectly cooked, garnished with herb butter that glistened under the lights. My chicken looked sad by comparison, though it tasted fine. So Emma, Nathan said, clearly trying to steer the conversation somewhere safer. What exactly do you do in marketing? I run digital campaigns mostly. Social media strategy, content creation, some consulting work. For the startup, Claire interjected. It's very grassroots. Very entrepreneurial. She made entrepreneurial sound like a disease. That must be exciting, Jessica offered kindly. Building something from the ground up. It is, I said. We've actually had some major growth this year. Tripled our client base. Growth is relative, Claire said, cutting into her steak. I mean, going from 10 clients to 30 is technically tripling, but it's not exactly. We went from 50 to 150, I interrupted. Claire paused mid-chew. In 6 months, I added. For just a second, I saw something flicker across her face. Surprise maybe. Or irritation that I'd contradicted her narrative. But she recovered quickly. That's wonderful, Emma. Really? I'm sure you're making, what, 60,000 a year now? 70? That's a decent living for someone your age. There it was. The assumption. The smug certainty in her voice that she had me figured out. That she knew my tax bracket, my net worth, my entire existence, and it was less than hers. I wanted to correct her. The words were right there on my tongue. But I bit them back. Because something told me this night wasn't over yet. And if I was going to reveal the truth, I wanted it to hurt. Something like that, I said instead. Claire smiled triumphantly. Well, you're doing great for yourself. Truly. Not everyone needs the high-powered career, the luxury lifestyle. Some people are perfectly happy with simpler things. Like what? I asked, keeping my voice even. Like, Claire gestured vaguely at me. Your little apartment. Your used car. What was it you told me last month, your weekly meal prep to save money? My jaw clenched. I did meal prep. But not to save money. I did it because I liked cooking and I didn't have time during the week to think about meals. But Claire had reframed it. Turned it into evidence of my supposed poverty. There's dignity in living within your means, Mom said quietly, trying to defend me without causing a scene. Absolutely, Claire agreed. Emma's always been the practical one. While I was off building my career in pharmaceutical sales, she was, well, I'm not quite sure what she was doing, actually. Wasn't there a pottery phase? That was college, I said through gritted teeth. Right. And before that, didn't you want to be a photographer? I was 16. My point is, you've always been searching. Trying different things. Never quite settling into something substantial. Claire took a long sip of her wine. Whereas I've always known what I wanted. Success. Stability. The ability to enjoy life's luxuries. She gestured around the table as if Belmont's itself was proof of her superiority. Marcus and I work hard, she continued. We both have demanding careers. But we also know how to live. We don't deprive ourselves. We don't shop at discount stores or cut coupons or drive cars from 2015. My car was from 2016. But I didn't correct her. Not everyone values the same things, Claire, I said carefully. Of course not. And that's fine. You value, what? Experiences over things? Isn't that what minimalists always say? I wasn't a minimalist. I had a storage unit full of things I'd accumulated over the years, including several designer items I'd never even worn because I didn't want to deal with Claire's questions about where I got them. But again, I said nothing. Actually, Jessica said, clearly uncomfortable, I think Emma's approach sounds refreshing. There's something to be said for not being obsessed with material things. Claire's smile hardened. I'm not obsessed, Jessica. I simply enjoy the fruits of my labor. Is that a crime? Of course not, Jessica backtracked quickly. The table fell silent except for the clink of silverware on china. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. Feel the heat rising to my face. Every fiber of my being wanted to stand up and walk out. But I didn't. Because I could sense it building. The crescendo. The moment when Claire would push too far and everything would come crashing down around her. And I wanted to be there when it happened. Dessert menus arrived. Claire ordered 3 different desserts for the table to share. None of us had asked for dessert. So Emma, Marcus said, attempting conversation again. Any vacation plans? Claire mentioned you haven't traveled in a while. I've been busy with work, I said simply. Too busy to take even a weekend trip? Claire asked. Or is it more that you're saving up for something big? A down payment on a condo maybe? I'm not looking to buy right now. Smart. Real estate in this city is insane. Though Marcus and I just invested in a second property. A little vacation rental in Colorado. The returns are incredible. Of course they did. We're thinking about buying a third property next year, Claire added. Maybe something international. Marcus has his eye on Portugal. That's nice, I said flatly. You could always rent from us, Claire offered, her voice dripping with false generosity. Family discount. Though I suppose even with a discount, it might be outside your budget. That was it. That was the moment. I felt something snap inside me. Not in an explosive way. But quietly. Like a thread that had been pulled too tight for too long finally giving way. I set down my fork. I looked Claire directly in the eyes. And I smiled. Actually, Claire, I've been meaning to talk to you about something. Her expression shifted slightly. Curiosity mixed with wariness. I know you've been worried about me. About my finances. My career. My lifestyle. I wouldn't say worried, but I want you to know, I continued, my voice steady and calm, that I'm doing fine. Better than fine, actually. Claire's eyes narrowed. The startup you mentioned? The one you keep calling little? I paused. We were acquired 3 months ago. By a major firm out of New York. The table went quiet. Acquired? Mom repeated. I nodded. I was one of 3 founding partners. I owned 30% of the company. Claire's face had gone very still. The acquisition was 8 figures, I said. My share after taxes was just over $27 million. You could have heard a pin drop. Marcus's mouth fell open slightly. Jessica's eyes went wide. Nathan looked like he'd just witnessed a car accident. Mom gasped softly. And Claire looked like I'd slapped her across the face. You're lying, she said finally. I'm not. If you had that kind of money, you'd, she gestured at me helplessly. You're wearing a dress from Banana Republic. Because I like it, I said simply. I like my car too. And my apartment. And my meal prep Sundays. I like my life, Claire. I don't need to change it to prove anything to anyone. The desserts arrived. No one touched them. 27 million, Marcus breathed. Give or take, I confirmed. Claire's face had gone through several colors, white, then red, then a kind of splotchy purple. Her hands were shaking. Why didn't you tell us? Mom asked, her voice small. I was going to, I said. But then I realized something. I realized that the money didn't change who I was. And I didn't want people treating me differently because of it. I wanted to be loved for me. Not for what I could buy or where I could take people or what I could do for them. I looked at Claire. I wanted to see who would value me when they thought I had nothing. The words hung in the air. Claire's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. That's not fair, she finally whispered. What's not fair? You let me think, you let me believe that I was struggling? That I was poor? That I was less successful than you? I tilted my head. I never said any of those things, Claire. You assumed them. And then you spent years making me feel small because of assumptions you made. I never, you absolutely did, I said, my voice harder now. Tonight alone you've called me cheap, unsuccessful, desperate, and pathetic. Not in those exact words, maybe. But that's what you meant. That's what you've always meant. Tears were forming in Claire's eyes. But I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No guilt. Just emptiness where my love for my sister used to be. I think, I said quietly, that says more about you than it ever said about me. I stood up. Emma, wait, Mom started. I'm going to head out, I said, pulling my purse over my shoulder. I'll call you tomorrow, Mom. Happy early birthday. I turned to leave. That's when Claire's voice rang out, shrill and desperate. You can't just leave. What about the bill? I paused. Turned back slowly. What about it? The bill, Emma. For dinner. You can't just what? I asked. Leave you to pay for the meal you ordered? The wine you insisted on? The 3 desserts no one wanted? Claire's face went pale. I thought, since I'm secretly rich, I should cover everything. I smiled. That's interesting. Because all night you've been telling me how I can't afford things. How I'm living this cheap, budget-conscious life. So which is it, Claire? Am I too poor to keep up with you, or rich enough to pay for your expensive habits? She opened her mouth but no sound came out. Here's the thing, I said. I could pay for this meal. I could pay for this entire restaurant. I could buy it, actually, and turn it into a parking lot if I wanted to. But I'm not going to. I reached into my purse and pulled out 2 20s. This should cover my chicken and salad. Plus tip. I placed the bills on the table. Have a lovely evening, everyone. I walked out before anyone could respond. The night air hit my face like cold water. My hands were shaking. My heart was racing. But I felt lighter than I had in years. I got into my 2016 Honda Civic, the car Claire had mocked, and sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom, "Emma, please come back. Let's talk about this." Then another from Marcus, "I'm so sorry. We had no idea." Then Jessica, "That was the most badass thing I've ever seen." I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I drove home to my modest apartment, the one Claire had called little, and poured myself a glass of wine from a bottle that cost $14. I sat on my second-hand couch and stared at the wall. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt free. But the story doesn't end there. Because what happened after I left that restaurant set off a chain of events that would change everything. Not just for me. But for Claire too. I didn't hear from my sister for 3 days. 3 days of silence that felt both liberating and suffocating. Mom called twice. I let it go to voicemail both times. I wasn't ready to talk yet. Wasn't ready to explain or justify or comfort anyone about what had happened at Belmont's. I needed space. Space to process. Space to breathe. On the 4th day, I finally called Mom back. She answered on the first ring. "Emma, honey, I'm so glad you called." Her voice was strained. Tired. "Hi, Mom. Can we talk? About the other night?" I sighed. "What's there to talk about?" Claire is devastated. Of course she was. She feels terrible about what she said. How she treated you. Does she? I asked. Or does she feel terrible that she was wrong about me? Silence on the other end. "That's what I thought," I said quietly. "Emma, she's your sister." "I know who she is, Mom. She made a mistake. People make mistakes." I closed my eyes. "This wasn't a mistake, Mom. This was years of condescension and cruelty disguised as concern. This was her needing to feel superior to me, needing to put me down to make herself feel bigger. That's not a mistake. That's a pattern. She loves you. Does she?" The question hung in the air. Because I genuinely didn't know the answer anymore. Had Claire ever loved me? Or had she only loved the version of me that made her feel better about herself, the struggling little sister who needed her guidance, her pity, her scraps of approval? "I need time," I said finally. "How much time?" "I don't know." Mom was quiet for a moment. Then, "There's something else you should know." My stomach tightened. "What?" "The bill. From Belmont's." "What about it?" "Claire's credit card was declined." I sat up straighter. "What?" "When they tried to run it for the full amount, everything she'd ordered plus what everyone else had, it was declined. She tried 2 other cards. Both declined." "How is that possible?" "She and Marcus are in debt," Mom finished. "Serious debt. I didn't know until that night. None of us did." I felt the room tilt slightly. "What do you mean?" Mom sighed. "After you left, everything fell apart. Claire tried to pay with Marcus's card. Also declined. She was mortified. Jessica and Nathan ended up covering most of it, but it was humiliating for everyone. I don't understand. Claire's always talking about their money. Their investments. Their lifestyle. It's all leveraged, Emma. All of it. The house, the cars, the vacations, everything is financed to the maximum. And apparently, Marcus lost a major client 6 months ago. Their income dropped significantly, but they kept spending like nothing had changed. I felt dizzy. They're underwater, Mom continued. Credit card debt, home equity loans, car payments they can't afford. That second property in Colorado? They put down 5% and the mortgage is killing them. Claire told me everything that night after you left. She broke down completely. Why are you telling me this? Because I think you should know. I think you deserve to understand what was really happening. Why Claire was so mean. I supplied. Defensive, Mom corrected gently. She was projecting, honey. All that talk about your cheap life, your budget-conscious choices, she was describing her own fear. Her own shame. She was drowning and trying to convince everyone, including herself, that she wasn't. I didn't know what to say. Part of me felt vindicated. Justified in my anger. But another part, a part one didn't want to acknowledge, felt sad. That doesn't excuse what she did, I said. No, Mom agreed. It doesn't. But maybe it explains it. We ended the call shortly after. I sat in my apartment, staring at my phone, my mind racing. Claire was broke. The sister who had spent years mocking my lifestyle, my choices, my perceived poverty, was actually the one struggling. It was almost poetic. Almost. But I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. Instead, I felt hollow. A week passed. Then 2. I threw myself into work, into new projects, new investments, new ways to grow the wealth I'd accumulated. I donated generously to charities. Set up a scholarship fund for underprivileged students. Bought Mom a new car without telling her where the money came from. I lived my life exactly as I had before, except now the secret was out. Some people treated me differently. Friends from college suddenly remembered I existed. Distant relatives reached out with investment opportunities. I ignored most of them. The ones that hurt were the people who felt betrayed by my secrecy. Who accused me of lying, of playing games, of testing them. Maybe I had been testing them. Maybe that made me a bad person. I wasn't sure anymore. On a Wednesday evening in late October, my phone rang. Claire's name appeared on the screen. I stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Hello. Emma. Her voice was small. Broken. Claire. Can we talk? In person? Every instinct told me to say no. To protect myself. To maintain the boundaries I'd finally established. But something in her voice stopped me. Okay, I said. We met at a small coffee shop near my apartment. Neutral territory. Claire arrived early. I saw her through the window before I went in, sitting at a corner table, hands wrapped around a mug, staring into space. She looked different. Tired. Worn. The polish and perfection that usually surrounded her had cracked, revealing something raw underneath. I walked in and sat down across from her. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Claire looked up. Her eyes were red-rimmed. No makeup. Hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Thank you for coming, she said. I nodded. I've been trying to figure out what to say. I've started this conversation in my head 1,000 times. Practiced different versions, different approaches. She laughed bitterly. But now that you're here, I don't know where to start. How about the truth? I suggested. Claire flinched. The truth is I'm a mess, she said finally. My marriage is falling apart. Our finances are destroyed. I can't sleep. I can't eat. I spent 3 days crying after that dinner because I realized that everything I thought I knew about myself was a lie. She looked at me. I thought I was successful. I thought I had it all figured out. I thought, her voice broke. I thought I was better than you. The words hung between us. And the worst part, she continued, is that I think part of me needed to believe that. Needed to believe you were struggling so I could feel okay about my own choices. About the debt we were accumulating. About the lies I was telling myself. Why? I asked quietly. Because if you were doing fine, if you were actually happy with your simple life, then what did that say about me? About all my striving and spending and performing? Tears rolled down her cheeks. It meant I was doing it all wrong. It meant the life I'd built was empty. And I couldn't face that. I watched her cry. Part of me wanted to comfort her. The sister I used to be would have reached across the table, held her hand, told her everything would be okay. But I wasn't that sister anymore. You humiliated me, I said. For years. In front of family. In front of strangers. You made me feel worthless. I know. Do you? Because it wasn't just that dinner, Claire. That dinner was just the worst example. But it's been 1,000 small cuts over the years. Comments about my clothes. My career. My relationships. My choices. You made me feel like I was never enough. I'm sorry, she whispered. Are you sorry you did it? Or are you sorry I turned out to be richer than you? Claire's face crumpled. I deserve that. Yes, I agreed. You do. We sat in silence. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said finally. Not right now. Maybe not ever. I understand. But I want you to understand something. I leaned forward. My money doesn't define me. It never has. I was the same person before I told you as I am now. The same person you mocked and belittled and dismissed. Claire nodded, unable to meet my eyes. And that person, I continued, deserved better from you. She deserved love and respect and support. She deserved a sister who celebrated her instead of tearing her down. You're right. I know I am. I stood up. Where are you going? Claire asked, panic in her voice. Home. But we're not, we haven't finished? I supplied. No. We haven't. But I don't think we can finish this conversation right now. Maybe we never will. Maybe this is just who we are now. Sisters who don't really know each other anymore. Emma, please, I need time, Claire. Real time. Not a couple weeks. Maybe months. Maybe years. I don't know. But I need you to respect that. I walked toward the door. For what it's worth, Claire called after me, you were always the stronger one. I just couldn't admit it. I paused but didn't turn around. Then I walked out into the October air. November came. Then December. The holidays approached with all their complicated family obligations. Mom called to ask what I was doing for Thanksgiving. I'm not sure yet, I told her. Claire wants to know if you'll come to her place. No. Emma, I said. No, Mom. I'm not ready. There was a long pause. What if I host? Mom offered. Neutral ground. Just the three of us. No Marcus. No expectations. Just family. I wanted to refuse. But something in me couldn't say no to Mom. Okay, I agreed. But I'm leaving if it gets uncomfortable. Fair enough. Thanksgiving arrived gray and cold. I drove to Mom's house with a knot in my stomach, carrying an expensive bottle of wine I'd picked up without thinking about the cost. Claire's car was already in the driveway. I almost turned around. Instead, I parked and walked to the door. Mom answered immediately, pulling me into a tight hug. Thank you for coming, she whispered. Claire was in the kitchen, hands busy with something at the counter. She looked up when I entered. Hi, she said softly. Hi. The air was thick with tension. Mom bustled around, trying to fill the silence with chatter about the turkey and the weather and wasn't it nice we were all together. Claire and I barely looked at each other. We sat down to eat. The meal was awkward. Painful. Every topic of conversation felt loaded. Halfway through, Claire set down her fork. I'm selling the house, she announced. Mom and I both looked up. Marcus and I are downsizing. Getting our finances under control. Facing reality. Claire's voice was steady but sad. We're also selling the Colorado property. Both cars. Most of our furniture. Claire, Mom started. It's okay, Claire interrupted. It's what we should have done a long time ago. We've been living a lie. Trying to look successful while drowning in debt. It has to stop. She looked at me. You were right to live the way you did. To not let money, or the appearance of money, define you. I wish I'd learned that lesson earlier. I didn't know what to say. I'm also going to therapy, Claire continued. Working through some things. About myself. About why I needed to tear you down to feel okay about myself. It's not an excuse. But I'm trying to understand it so I can change. Mom reached over and squeezed Claire's hand. I just sat there. I don't expect you to forgive me, Claire said, looking at me directly now. I don't even expect you to like me anymore. But I want you to know I'm trying to become someone worthy of being your sister again. The words settled over the table. I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness exactly. But maybe the first tiny crack in the wall I'd built. Okay, I said finally. Claire's eyes filled with tears. Okay? Okay, I hear you. Okay, I see you're trying. Okay, I paused, searching for words. Okay, maybe someday we can find our way back to each other. It wasn't much. But it was something. Claire nodded, wiping her eyes. We finished the meal in less painful silence. After dinner, Mom went to get dessert from the kitchen. Claire and I were alone at the table. Can I ask you something? She said quietly. Sure. Why did you hide it? The money? I thought about the question. Because I wanted to know who I was without it, I said finally. I wanted to build relationships that weren't based on what I could provide. I wanted to be loved for me, not for what I had. And were you? I thought about Derek, who left when I wouldn't fund his startup idea. About friends who disappeared when I wasn't useful. About Claire herself. Some people were, I said. The ones who matter. Claire nodded slowly. I wish I'd been one of them, she whispered. Me too. Mom returned with pie. The rest of the evening passed without incident. When I left, Claire walked me to my car. Thank you, she said. For coming. For listening. For not completely writing me off. I can't promise where we'll end up, I told her honestly. But I'm willing to see. That's more than I deserve. I got in my car. As I drove away, I watched Claire in my rearview mirror, standing in Mom's driveway, getting smaller and smaller. I didn't know if we'd ever truly repair what had been broken. But for the first time since that awful dinner at Belmont's, I felt like maybe we had a chance. December passed in a blur of work and holiday preparations. Claire and I texted occasionally. Brief messages. Neutral topics. It wasn't much, but it was more than the nothing we'd had before. On Christmas Eve, a package arrived at my apartment. Inside was a framed photo of Claire and me as children, arms wrapped around each other, both smiling at the camera with gap-toothed grins. Underneath was a note in Claire's handwriting, "We were friends once. Maybe we can be again. No rush. No pressure. Just hope. Love, C." I stared at the photo for a long time. At the two little girls who had no idea what would come. The jealousy and resentment. The hurt and betrayal. The years of distance. But also the possibility of reconciliation. I set the frame on my bookshelf. Right next to a photo of Mom and a painting I'd bought at a local artist's market. My apartment, my cheap, simple, modest apartment, was filled with things that mattered. Things that had meaning beyond their price tag. And for the first time in my life, I felt completely at peace with my choices. The money in my bank account didn't make me happy. But the freedom to live authentically, to be myself without performance or pretense, that was everything. A few days after Christmas, I got a call from an unknown number. Hello? Emma? This is Jessica. From the dinner at Belmont's. I was surprised. Oh. Hi. I hope it's okay that I'm calling. I got your number from Claire. It's fine. What's up? I wanted to apologize, Jessica said. For that night. For not speaking up when Claire was being cruel to you. I should have said something. Done something. I feel terrible about it. You didn't do anything wrong, I said. I didn't do anything right either. And I wanted you to know that what you did, standing up for yourself, refusing to play along with the pretense, it affected me. How so? It made me look at my own life. At the way Nathan and I have been living. We're not as bad off as Claire and Marcus, but we're definitely living beyond our means. Trying to keep up appearances. And for what? To impress people we barely know? To fit into some arbitrary definition of success? I listened. Anyway, Jessica continued, we're making changes. Scaling back. Being more honest with ourselves about what we actually want versus what we think we're supposed to want. And I wanted to thank you for that wake-up call. I wasn't trying to make a statement, I said. I know. That's what made it so powerful. You were just being yourself. Living your truth. It turns out that's revolutionary. We talked for a few more minutes before saying goodbye. After I hung up, I sat with the conversation. I hadn't meant to inspire anyone. I'd just been trying to survive. To protect myself. To reclaim my dignity. But maybe that was enough. Maybe sometimes the most radical thing you can do is simply refuse to play by rules that were never designed for your benefit. January arrived with snow and new beginnings. Claire and Marcus sold their house. They moved into a modest condo, smaller than my apartment, actually. Claire posted about it on social media with surprising honesty, downsizing, simplifying, and learning that enough is actually more than enough. The post got hundreds of supportive comments. I liked it but didn't comment. Baby steps. In February, Claire invited me to coffee. Not to apologize again or explain herself. Just to talk. We met at the same coffee shop where we'd had our painful conversation months earlier. But this time it was different. Claire talked about her therapy. About unpacking childhood messages about worth and success. About learning to measure her life by internal metrics instead of external ones. I talked about my work. About new projects I was funding. About finding purpose in using my resources to create opportunities for others. We talked for 2 hours. Not as the people we'd been, the cruel sister and the wounded victim. But as two women trying to figure out how to exist in a world that constantly told them they weren't enough. When we said goodbye, Claire hugged me. I hugged her back. It wasn't fixed. But it was better. March brought warmer weather and unexpected news. Mom called with excitement in her voice. Claire's pregnant. I felt a complex mix of emotions. That's wow. How is she? Scared. Happy. Overwhelmed. You know. All the things. Is she still going to therapy? Yes. And she and Marcus are in couples counseling too. They're really working on things. I was quiet for a moment. Emma? You still there? Yeah, Mom. I'm here. I'm happy for her. I really am. And I meant it. A few days later, I texted Claire, "Congratulations on the baby. I'm happy for you." Her response came immediately, "Thank you. It means everything that you'd say that. Would you maybe want to grab lunch sometime?" I hesitated before responding. Then, yes. I'd like that. We met for lunch the following week. Claire looked different again. Softer. Less defended. She told me about the pregnancy. About her fears of repeating her parents' mistakes. About wanting to raise a child who valued people over possessions. I want to be the kind of mother who teaches her kids what actually matters, she said. You will be, I told her. How do you know? Because you're already asking the right questions. We talked about other things too. Lighter things. Movies we'd seen. Books we were reading. Memories from childhood that didn't hurt to remember. It felt almost normal. Almost like we were sisters again. Can I tell you something? Claire asked as we were finishing our meal. Sure. That night at Belmont's. When you revealed everything about your money and walked out, it was the worst moment of my life. But also maybe the best. I raised my eyebrows. Because it forced me to look at myself, she explained. To see what I'd become. What I'd been doing to you. To Marcus. To myself. It was like suddenly all the illusions I'd built shattered at once and I had to face reality. That must have been painful. It was. But also freeing. Because I couldn't hide anymore. Couldn't pretend. I had to deal with what was actually true. She looked at me with clear eyes. You saved me, Emma. Even though I didn't deserve it. even though you didn't mean to. You saved me by refusing to enable my delusions anymore. I felt tears prick my eyes. I didn't want to hurt you, I said. I know. But maybe I needed to hurt to wake up. We sat in silence for a moment. Thank you, Claire said finally. For what? For not giving up on me completely. For leaving the door open even when I didn't deserve it. For being stronger than I ever was. You're strong too, I said. You're just learning a different kind of strength. She nodded, wiping her eyes. When we left the restaurant, Claire hugged me tight. I love you, she whispered. I know I haven't said it in a long time. But I do. I love you. I hugged her back. I love you too. And I meant it. April brought cherry blossoms and new possibilities. Claire and I started having regular coffee dates. Once a week, then twice. We talked about everything and nothing. The past still hurt sometimes. The memories of what she'd said, how she'd treated me, they didn't disappear overnight. But we were building something new on top of the rubble. Something more honest. More real. In May, Claire asked if I wanted to come to her ultrasound appointment. Marcus will be there, she said quickly. But I thought, if you wanted, you could come too. As the baby's aunt. My throat tightened. I'd love that. The ultrasound was on a Tuesday morning. I met them at the clinic. Marcus looked uncomfortable when I arrived, probably remembering the last time we'd all been together. But he shook my hand and said, "Thank you for coming." In the exam room, we watched the grainy image on the screen. The technician pointed out tiny features. The head. The hands. The rapid flutter of the heartbeat. Claire was crying. So was I. After the appointment, the three of us went to lunch. It was awkward at first. But Marcus apologized for that night at Belmont's. For not speaking up. For enabling Claire's behavior. I was just as trapped in the performance as she was, he admitted. Maybe more so. I let my ego and my need to look successful destroy our finances and our marriage. I'm working on being better. Being real. I appreciated his honesty. We talked about their plans for the baby. About downsizing further to save for childcare. About values they wanted to instill. It was the most genuine conversation I'd ever had with Marcus. When we parted ways, I felt lighter. Like maybe we could all find our way to something better. June arrived with heat and humidity. Claire was showing now, her belly growing round with life. She called me one evening, her voice excited. I'm making a registry. For the baby shower. Can I ask your opinion on some things? Of course. Okay, so, she paused. This is embarrassing to admit, but I've been looking at all these expensive designer baby items. The $1,000 strollers and the boutique nursery furniture. And I had to stop myself. Why? Because I realized I was doing it again. Equating expensive with better. Trying to show off even before the baby is born. And I don't want to be that person anymore. My heart swelled. So what are you going to do? I asked. I'm registering for practical things. Things that actually matter. Quality stuff that will last, but nothing extravagant. Nothing to prove a point. Just what we need. That sounds perfect. Will you help me? She asked. Help me figure out what's actually necessary versus what's just for show. Yes, I said without hesitation. We spent hours on the phone and in stores, going through baby items. I told her about research I'd done when my friend had her baby. About car seat safety ratings and practical nursery setups. Claire listened intently, taking notes. "This is fun," she said at one point. "Yeah? Yeah. It feels like we're actually sisters again. Like we're on the same team." I smiled. "We are." The baby shower happened in July. Mom hosted it at her house. It was small. Just family and close friends. No extravagant decorations. No over-the-top games. Just people who loved Claire, celebrating this new life. I gave her a gift I'd chosen carefully, a handmade quilt from a local artist, each square stitched with love and care. Claire cried when she opened it. "It's perfect," she whispered. "Just like your baby will be," I said. We hugged. And in that moment, I felt it. The last piece of my anger dissolving. The final wall between us crumbling. We weren't the same as we'd been before. We were better. August brought the end of summer and the beginning of something new. Claire went into labor on a humid Tuesday evening. She called me from the hospital at 11 p.m. "It's happening," she said, breathless. "I'm on my way." I drove through empty streets, my heart pounding. At the hospital, Marcus met me in the waiting room. "She's doing great," he said. "But it might be a while." I settled in to wait. Hours passed. Then, at 6:43 a.m., a nurse came out smiling. "It's a girl. Mom and baby are healthy. You can come back in a few minutes." When I walked into the recovery room, Claire was holding a tiny bundle, her face exhausted and radiant. "Emma," she breathed. "Come meet your niece." I approached slowly, reverently. The baby was perfect. Tiny pink face. Delicate fingers. Eyes squinted shut against the bright hospital lights. "She's beautiful," I whispered. "Do you want to hold her?" Claire asked. I nodded, unable to speak. Claire placed the baby in my arms. She was so light. So fragile. So completely perfect. "We named her Grace," Claire said softly. "Grace," I repeated. "Because that's what you gave me," Claire continued, her voice thick with emotion. "Grace I didn't deserve. Grace that saved me. Grace that brought us back together." Tears rolled down my cheeks. "Claire, I mean it," she interrupted. "You could have cut me out of your life forever. You had every right to. But you gave me grace. You gave me the chance to change. To be better. And now I get to teach my daughter about that kind of love. That kind of forgiveness." I looked down at Grace, her tiny face peaceful in sleep. "She's going to be amazing," I said. "I hope so," Claire whispered. "I hope I can be the mother she deserves. The sister you deserved." "You will be," I told her. "You already are." We sat together as the sun rose outside the hospital window. 3 generations of women. Each of us learning, growing, becoming. And in that moment, I understood something profound. Money hadn't made me rich. The acquisition hadn't changed my life. What changed everything was choosing to live authentically. To value myself. To demand respect and give grace in equal measure. That night at Belmont's, when Claire mocked my cheap life and I finally revealed the truth, wasn't really about the money at all. It was about reclaiming my worth. About refusing to be diminished. About standing in my truth even when it was uncomfortable. The money was just a detail. The real wealth was in knowing myself. Loving myself. Being myself without apology. And now, holding my niece, watching my sister become the person she was always capable of being, this was the true reward. Not the bank account or the investments or the material possessions. But this. Connection. Growth. Love that had been tested and survived. Family that had been broken and healed. I looked at Claire. She looked back at me. And without words, we understood. We'd both been transformed by that terrible, beautiful night. We'd both become better versions of ourselves. Not because of money or success or any external measure. But because we'd finally learned what actually mattered. "Thank you," I whispered to Claire. "For what?" she asked, confused. "For pushing me to my breaking point. For forcing me to stand up for myself. For giving me the chance to discover who I really am." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "I should be thanking you." "Then let's thank each other," I suggested. She smiled. "Okay." Grace stirred in my arms, making a small sound. Outside, the city was waking up. And inside this hospital room, a new chapter was beginning. Not just for Grace. But for all of us. I thought back to that night at Belmont's. To Claire's cruel words and mocking laugh. To the moment I revealed my secret and walked away. To the aftermath, the pain and anger and slow, difficult healing. And I realized something. I wouldn't change any of it. Because all of it, every terrible moment, led here. To this room. To this baby. To this peace. Sometimes you have to burn everything down to build something better. Sometimes you have to break completely to heal properly. Sometimes the worst moments of your life become the catalyst for the best transformations. I handed Grace back to Claire. "Get some rest," I told her. "I'll be here when you wake up." "Promise?" she asked, suddenly vulnerable. "Promise." I sat back in the uncomfortable hospital chair and watched Claire drift off to sleep, Grace cradled against her chest. And I thought about all the ways we measure our lives. By money. By status. By possessions. By appearances. But none of that was real. The only thing that mattered was this. Being present. Being authentic. Being brave enough to demand better and gracious enough to offer second chances. My cheap life that Claire had mocked? It was actually rich beyond measure. Rich in meaning. In purpose. In genuine connection. And now, finally, it was rich in family too. Real family. Not the performative kind that crumbles under pressure. But the kind that survives betrayal and comes back stronger. I pulled out my phone and took a photo of Claire and Grace sleeping. Not for social media. Not to prove anything to anyone. Just for me. A reminder of what actually matters. A reminder that wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in moments like this. Outside, the August sun climbed higher. A new day. A new beginning. And this time, we were ready for it. All of us. Together.